In this video, I'll tell you about how my prediction about Warhammer 40,000 Combat Patrol came true, and what it means going forward. Well, it seems I've been psychic again. If you've been watching the channel for a long time, and it'll actually be 11 years of Tabletop Minions next month, so you could have been watching for a very long time, but then you'll know that sometimes I say things or make videos about what Games Workshop should do, or what I hope they do, and then some of these things actually come to pass. Commenters have accused me of being psychic in the past. Even you, Jonathan. But actually, I've just been doing this for like a really long time, and patterns seem to emerge. Also, capitalism. Anyway, in early May of last year, 2023, I made a video called What They Should Do with Combat Patrol, which you can watch here. Pachow. And in this video, I said some things.
Games Workshop could just simply release like new free Combat Patrol datasheet downloads or whatever with different Combat Patrol lists for one of those armies that uses different models. You wouldn't have to use the ones in the Combat Patrol box. They could just come out with another sheet and say, well, if you don't like those models, what about these?
And lo and behold, I was right again. At the beginning of this year, GW announced the first Combat Patrol list without a direct product launch to accompany it. Strike Team Solarian, Space Marines anyway, which kind of makes sense, obviously. So what's included in Strike Team Solarian? Well, there's two leaders, Lieutenant Solarian, hence the name, who is a Primaris lieutenant in Phobos armor, and then there's also Librarian Zarius. Why is no one ever named Smith? You know what I mean? But anyway, who's a Primaris librarian also in Phobos armor, right? Most of this force is in Phobos armor, which is the kind of sneaky, stealthy sort of Primaris armor. Speaking of sneaky, there's also 10 infiltrators, which are again Primaris in Phobos armor. There's a pattern, right? However, here to break that pattern is also a unit of 3 suppressors, who probably aren't sneaky at all as they have humongous guns and fly on jetpacks, which are probably pretty loud. That infiltrator squad of 10 can be split into 2 squads of 5 each, and then you'd probably attach each of the leaders to each of those squads of 5, which puts you in the familiar territory of having only 3 units, 5 infiltrators with the lieutenant, 5 infiltrators with the librarian, and then the unit of the 3 suppressors. They may have some of the same problems I've had with my Space Marine Combat Patrol of only also 3 units, except that this team's kind of default enhancement in their rules allows them to take objectives and hold them even though they've moved off elsewhere to do other things. Handy. The suppressors have a stratagem for 1 command point that allows them to actually deal with vehicles and monsters as well. It's called the Giant Slayer Doctrine, which is kind of an awesome name, I think. That's another problem that the base Space Marine Leviathan Combat Patrol has, and honestly, several other Combat Patrols as well. They have no answer for vehicles and monsters. If anything, I feel like this Combat Patrol is maybe a little bit more finely tuned than many of the other ones that we've already seen. All of those which basically had to be like, product boxes that were then shoehorned into the Combat Patrol system when 10th launched. Now, as soon as I saw the article about this new Combat Patrol in the Warhammer community website, I realized that this was most, but not all, of the Space Marine portion of the old Shadowspear box set, released way back in 2019 during 8th edition. That box had all this stuff that's in the Combat Patrol here, plus also it had a unit of 3 sniper types called Eliminators, which aren't used in the Combat Patrol list as is. Of course, there was also an entire force of Chaos Space Marines also included in that box, which had in that group possibly the coolest Chaos model ever, at least in my mind, the Venom Crawler, which is basically just a giant Chaos spider robot. Now, they don't sell this set anymore, obviously. It's from like 5 years and 2 editions ago. You might have bought it back then, and then you might have it sitting around, right, waiting to now be turned into a cool new combat patrol. It might be sitting in a closet or under your bed or, like on a random bottom shelf in your basement under some other stuff. And it took like a surprising amount of time to find, But if you didn't already have it, well, eBay probably isn't going to be your friend in this situation either. Recently, this box sold between $250 and $350 according to the sold items filter on the eBay app. You can still get the parts that you need for this combat patrol from Games Workshop, however. The Vanguard Task Force is everything you need except for the Librarian. It comes with the 3 Eliminator Sniper guys too, which you don't need, and it sells for about $140, which is cheaper than a normal combat patrol. Currently, it says that the set is online only, so you probably aren't going to find it at your local independent game stores. But you might, To complete the list, you also then need the Primaris Librarian in Phobos armor for $35, who isn't online only, so maybe you can get him in a local shop. This makes this particular combat patrol a total of $175 instead of the standard $160 that all the current combat patrols cost. This could be a reason that they decided to start doing these extra combat patrols. They will cost more unless you have an old set like, Shadow Spear here sitting on a shelf somewhere. And they could also, write them to help move product that previously wasn't selling that well. In the past, they've certainly made rules to get competitive players to buy models that haven't been moving off the shelf. Also, there's the cost of the Combat Patrol list itself. This list was released in White Dwarf number 496, which cost $11. Uncle Adam, I hear you say, didn't they say that when they announced Combat Patrol at Adepticon 2023 that it would, quote, always be free, end quote? They did. I remember. I was there at that preview. Well, fear not, I guess. Though this Combat Patrol list is currently only available in White Dwarf for $11, the Warhammer community article said that it will be available free in the app and on Warcom in a few months' time. So again, technically free if you want to wait. So is this a combat patrol I'd like to build and paint and play? Strangely, yes. Now, of course, it helps that I already have all the models here on the sprue, But what I find strange is that the style of play that this combat patrol seems to call for is something that I've not really seen before in other combat patrol lists that I've looked at. There's a lot of movement and kind of bobbing and weaving called for in the list. And I'm kind of intrigued by that, especially for Space Marines. Are there other combat patrols that play like this currently? Let me know down in the comments below. Therefore, since I was correct in my psychic predictions that GW would make more standalone lists for Combat Patrol, although they honestly started doing it earlier than I had thought. I suggested they might start a year after the launch of 10th, and they did it in like half that amount of time. Well, then the question becomes this. What's next? Will they do more of these? I hope so. And if so, which forces? I know I have some definite ideas that I'd like them to try, frankly. Heck, one of them I'd already mentioned in the video that I pachowed earlier. In that video, I was talking about Ashes of Faith, the kind of weird Kill Team expansion that came out last year that sold out like instantly and caused a lot of folks to freak out, frankly. This was sort of in the earlier days of GW not producing enough product, thereby selling out of products very quickly. I talked about this problem in a recent video right here. Pachow. But the main thing about Ashes of Faith were the new Inquisitorial Agents models in the box. The other models in the box were all older stuff, but these 7 models were really cool new sculpts. And they didn't have enough at launch, of course. It wouldn't make sense to make a Combat Patrol list for models that aren't available, right? And also that no one could get when they were supposed to have been released. However, as I also predicted somewhere, possibly on the Every Other Sunday show, I don't quite remember, but the cool Inquisitorial Agent sculpts would be released again later in a separate Kill Team box. That has come to pass, actually. You can get that set for $55 now, and I would love to see a Combat Patrol written for those models and possibly some other folks as well. I could see an Inquisitor model in there as a leader potentially, or if that's too much, too powerful, you could just use the Interrogator model that's in the set as the leader. Then you'd certainly need to like add some more forces like Tempestus Scions, veteran guardsmen, maybe even some like regular Cadian shock troops, or something cool, maybe like the Navy Breachers, or maybe just a second box of the Inquisitorial agents, because like 4 of the 7 models in that box can each be built in 2 different ways. However they're going to do it, I hope to see it sooner versus later. Actually seeing this starting to happen with Combat Patrol makes me feel better about the longevity of the Combat Patrol format. Adding these lists out there for people to choose if they like weren't interested in the lists that are currently available is going to do big work for making the format more accepted by veteran players, in my mind. It'll also give more choices to new players who are considering getting into Combat Patrol, which is also great. And for those who are impatient, it'll also sell more copies of White Dwarf. So what do you think? Which unattached Combat Patrol list would you like to see next? Maybe something from like a FOMO box from the last couple of years? Or just like a cool mixture of like Kill Team sets and regular Warhammer 40k sets? Let me know what you'd like to see down in the comments below. I mean, heck, maybe even someone from GW will see it. It could happen, If you liked this video, and I think you might have, remember, I'm psychic, then I'd really appreciate it if you'd hit the like button. It really does help with YouTube. Subscribe if you want to see more videos every single Friday, and thanks for watching.